He was once the kind of man people overlooked without trying. Quiet, patient, almost invisible. His name was Daniel, and his world revolved around one woman, Mara, his wife of 7 years. They lived in a cramped apartment with peeling paint, unpaid bills stacked in a drawer, and dreams that felt too big for their reality. Yet, every night, Daniel came home to a warm meal and a woman who believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. Mara was his anchor. She reminded him who he was when the world kept telling him who he wasn't. Daniel had always dreamed of wealth, not for luxury, but for freedom. Freedom from embarrassment. Freedom from borrowing. Freedom from feeling small. Mara knew this and supported him relentlessly. She sold her jewelry once to help him start a small logistics business. When it failed, she didn't complain. When he failed again, she held him and whispered that tomorrow would be better. Then one opportunity changed everything. Daniel met Victor, an investor with expensive shoes and careless confidence. Victor saw potential in Daniel's ideas and offered him a partnership. It felt unreal. Within a year, Daniel's business exploded. Contracts rolled in. His phone never stopped ringing. The poor man who once counted coins now signed checks without checking balances. Money changed his schedule first, then his tone, then his patience. Mara noticed it quietly. Daniel no longer ate dinner at home. He no longer asked about her day. When she spoke, he was distracted, glued to his phone, laughing at jokes she didn't hear. The man who once needed her strength now acted like he had outgrown it. At first, Mara blamed herself. She told herself he was just busy, successful, tired. She adjusted her life to fit his new one. She dressed better. She spoke less. She waited longer. But success kept pulling Daniel further away. He moved them into a luxurious house without consulting her. It was supposed to be a gift, but it felt like a statement. The house was big, cold, and empty. Mara walked through rooms that echoed with silence, wondering where she fit into this new life. Daniel began attending parties, exclusive gatherings with people who spoke loudly and laughed easily. They admired his success, praised his ambition, and made subtle jokes about his humble beginnings. At first, Daniel defended Mara when they asked why she didn't attend often. Later, he stopped mentioning her at all. One night, he came home smelling of expensive perfume that wasn't hers. Mara didn't accuse him. She didn't cry. She simply asked, calmly, "Are you still happy with me?" Daniel paused. That pause said more than any words ever could. He told her she was overthinking, that she didn't understand his world anymore, that things had changed. He didn't say he had forgotten her, but he didn't deny it either. From that night on, Daniel began to see Mara as a reminder of his past, not a part of his future. He bought her expensive gifts instead of giving her time. He transferred money instead of affection. In his mind, he was providing more than enough. But Mara wasn't asking for money. She was asking for him. The final crack came when Daniel forgot their anniversary. He was out of the country, closing a deal, celebrating with strangers who didn't know his fears, his failures, or his sacrifices. Mara spent that night alone, staring at an old photo of them smiling on their wedding day, wondering how love could be so strong and still disappear so quietly. When Daniel returned, Mara was different, calmer, distant. She no longer begged. She no longer waited up. Daniel noticed, but too late. He thought wealth had secured his happiness. He didn't realize it had only revealed who he truly was becoming. And while he was busy building an empire, something precious was slowly walking out of his life, without making a sound. Daniel didn't notice the exact moment Mara stopped trying. There was no dramatic argument, no slammed doors, no tears on the floor. It happened quietly, the way important things often do. She stopped asking where he was going, stopped reminding him to eat, stopped waiting up at night. She moved through the house like a guest who knew she would soon be leaving. Daniel mistook her silence for understanding. His world was expanding rapidly. New partners, new cities, new levels of influence. People now stood when he entered rooms. They listened when he spoke. They praised his discipline, his intelligence, his self-made story. Every compliment pushed Mara further into the shadows of his memory. When colleagues asked about his wife, he gave short answers. She's fine. She prefers privacy. Sometimes, he didn't mention her at all. In those moments, he felt strangely lighter, as if erasing her from conversations erased a part of his old identity he no longer wanted. At home, Mara packed her belongings slowly over several weeks. Not because she wasn't sure, but because she wanted to be certain Daniel would notice. He didn't. He assumed the half-empty closets were part of her reorganizing phase. He assumed the locked guest room was her desire for space. What he didn't assume was that she was preparing to leave forever. One evening, Daniel arrived home unusually early. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No lights. No music. No smell of food. He called out Mara's name. No answer. He checked the bedroom. Her side of the bed was neatly made, untouched. On the dining table sat a brown envelope with his name written in careful handwriting. Inside was a letter. Mara didn't accuse him. She didn't insult him. She didn't beg. She simply told the truth. She wrote about the nights she cried alone while he laughed elsewhere. About how she became invisible in a life she helped build. About how she missed a man who once held her hand when he had nothing. She told him she wasn't leaving because he was rich, but because he had forgotten how to love. I hope your money keeps you warm, the letter ended. Because your absence taught me how to survive without you. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. Not guilt, not regret, annoyance. He folded the letter and placed it back on the table. She was being dramatic, he told himself. She would return. She always forgave him. She always stayed. Days passed, then weeks. Mara didn't call. That was when Daniel began to feel it. Not loneliness, but inconvenience. The house felt disorganized. His clothes weren't where they used to be. Meals tasted bland when ordered in. The silence that once felt peaceful now echoed too loudly. Still, he didn't reach out. Instead, he buried himself deeper into work. He started seeing Layla, a woman he met at one of his business events. She was confident, fashionable, and admired his success openly. She never asked about his past, never questioned his late nights, never reminded him of who he used to be. With Layla, Daniel felt powerful. They traveled together, appeared at events together, took pictures that flooded social media. People praised them as a power couple. Daniel liked that phrase. It sounded expensive. It sounded successful. Mara, on the other hand, disappeared completely. Unknown to Daniel, she had returned to her hometown. She started small, teaching, mentoring young women, rebuilding a life piece by piece. The same resilience she once poured into Daniel, she now poured into herself. Months later, Daniel received news that Victor had pulled out of the partnership. No warning, no explanation, just a legal notice. Daniel laughed it off at first. He had built this. He was the face of the company. But contracts were frozen. Accounts were audited. Rumors spread faster than truth. Layla started becoming distant. Her calls shortened. Her patience thinned. She complained about stress, about negativity, about how this wasn't what she signed up for. For the first time in years, Daniel felt uncertain. And in uncertainty, memories have a way of resurfacing. He remembered Mara's voice, her patience, the way she believed in him before anyone else did. He remembered how safe he once felt. But memory is cruel. It only visits when it's too late. Daniel had chosen success over loyalty, pride over love, and silence over accountability. Now, the empire he built was beginning to crack, and the woman he abandoned was no longer waiting to save him. The shock wasn't what Mara did next. The shock was what Daniel was about to lose permanently. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It happened in humiliating pieces. Daniel's company didn't announce bankruptcy immediately. Instead, there were delays, missed payments, meetings that ended with forced smiles and vague promises. Investors stopped answering calls. Employees whispered in hallways when they thought he couldn't hear. The confidence that once followed him like a shadow began to disappear. Daniel told himself it was temporary. Layla didn't believe that. She started canceling plans. She no longer posted pictures of them together. When Daniel spoke about rebuilding, her eyes wandered. She complained about his mood, his stress, his negative energy. One night, after a brief argument about money she claimed she didn't care about, she packed a small bag and said she needed space. She never came back. That was the night Daniel truly felt alone. The house that once symbolized success now felt like a punishment. Too big, too quiet. Every room reminded him of someone who used to be there, someone who would have stayed even when everything was falling apart. Mara. For the first time, Daniel searched for her online. He scrolled through old messages, photos he never deleted, memories he thought money had replaced. He found nothing recent. No pictures. No updates. It was as if she had erased herself from the world he knew. That scared him more than losing money. Daniel finally reached out. He sent a short message. Casual. Careful. Hope you're doing well. No reply. He waited a day. Then another. Then a week. Still nothing. Panic crept in slowly. Not dramatic panic. Quiet fear. The kind that settles in your chest and refuses to leave. He began calling mutual friends. Some said they hadn't heard from her in months. Others gave vague answers and changed the subject. Eventually, one person told him the truth. Mara had moved on. Not in the way Daniel expected. She wasn't dating a rich man. She wasn't living extravagantly. She had built something of her own. Small, meaningful, respected. She was known for her kindness, her strength, her wisdom. People spoke of her with admiration, not pity. Daniel didn't recognize that version of her. He drove to her hometown without thinking it through. No assistance. No bodyguards. No confidence. Just desperation. When he found her, she was in a modest space, laughing with people who genuinely valued her presence. She looked lighter, healthier, free. When their eyes met, there was no anger in hers. Only distance. Daniel tried to speak, but words failed him. The man who once negotiated million-dollar deals couldn't form a proper sentence. Mara listened quietly as he apologized, as he blamed stress, as he blamed success, as he claimed he didn't realize what he was losing. She didn't interrupt. When he finished, she smiled sadly and said something that shattered him. "You didn't forget me when you got rich," she said. "You chose to forget me." She told him she had mourned their marriage while still inside it, that she had grieved him long before she left, that the man standing in front of her was a stranger wearing the face of someone she once loved. Daniel asked for another chance. Mara said no, not angrily, not proudly, just firmly. She explained that love cannot survive where respect dies, that she rebuilt herself from the ruins he left behind, and she refused to return to a place where she once felt invisible. Daniel realized then that money hadn't changed him. It had revealed him. He returned to the city empty-handed. His business officially collapsed 3 months later. Lawsuits followed. Assets were sold. The big house was gone. The cars, the lifestyle, all of it vanished. What remained was silence and regret. Daniel tried to rebuild his life quietly, away from cameras and praise. But some losses don't come back. Some doors close forever, not because of fate, but because of choice. And the woman who once would have stood. Lesson he could never undo. The shocking part wasn't that Daniel lost his wife. It was that he lost her after she had already given him everything. And in the end, wealth didn't make him powerful. It made him alone. Life after the fall was unfamiliar to Daniel. Not because he was poor, he had been poor before, but because this time there was no one beside him. No one to reassure him that failure was temporary. No one to remind him that he was still worthy without applause. He moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place he once promised himself he would never return to. The walls were bare. The silence was heavy. At night, he lay awake replaying moments he used to ignore. Mara waiting up for him. Mara smiling through disappointment. Mara choosing him every single day while he slowly stopped choosing her. Regret is strange. It doesn't scream. It whispers. And those whispers followed Daniel everywhere. He tried to find meaning and work again, but doors that once opened easily now stayed shut. People who once praised his ambition avoided his calls. He realized something bitter. Many of those relationships were built on success, not substance. When the success disappeared, so did they. Daniel took smaller jobs, consulting, advising, work that paid bills but didn't feed his ego. It humbled him in ways wealth never did. For the first time in years, he listened more than he spoke. He noticed people. He noticed pain. And in noticing others, he began to understand what he had ignored in Mara. Occasionally, he heard about her through distant connections. She was thriving, not financially rich, but fulfilled. She was respected, admired, loved. People sought her guidance. Her name was spoken with warmth, not obligation. Daniel never reached out again. Not because he didn't want to, but because he finally understood that love isn't proven by words after damage is done. It's proven by consistency before damage happens. One evening, while cleaning out an old box, Daniel found a notebook. Inside were business ideas from his early days. On the last page was Mara's handwriting. I believe in you, even when you don't. He sat on the floor for a long time, holding that notebook, realizing the cruelest truth of all. The woman he lost wasn't taken from him. He walked away from her while she was still standing right in front of him. Years passed. Daniel rebuilt a modest life. Not glamorous, not admired, but honest. He mentored young entrepreneurs now, often warning them that success can be louder than wisdom, that money can drown out the voices that matter most if you let it. Some listened, some didn't. On quiet nights, Daniel still wondered who he might have been if he had remembered his wife instead of chasing applause. That question followed him like a shadow, one he deserved. Because the real shock wasn't the divorce. It wasn't the lost money. It wasn't even the loneliness. The real shock was this. Daniel became everything he once feared: successful, admired, and completely empty. Time has a way of teaching lessons pride refuses to learn. Daniel was older now, not just in years, but in spirit. The fire that once drove him had been replaced by something quieter: awareness. He no longer chased attention or validation. He lived simply, spoke carefully, and chose his words the way someone chooses fragile glass. People who met him later in life never knew his full story. They only knew him as the calm man who listened more than he talked. The man who warned others not to lose themselves while trying to win the world. But every lesson he taught came from a wound. One afternoon, Daniel was invited to speak at a small gathering of young entrepreneurs. No cameras, no headlines, just a room filled with ambition and hunger. Someone asked him what the biggest mistake of his career was. Daniel didn't talk about bad investments. He didn't mention wrong partners. He didn't blame the market. He said, "I thought success was about becoming more important. I didn't realize it was about remembering what was already important." The room went quiet. That night, Daniel walked home alone. As he passed a small restaurant, he saw a couple sitting close together, laughing softly. The woman rested her head on the man's shoulder. It was a simple moment, but it hit him harder than any failure ever had. Because once he had that, and he treated it like it was replaceable. At home, Daniel opened a letter he had written years ago, but never sent. It was addressed to Mara. Not an apology, he had already given those. It was a thank you. Thank you for believing in me when I was nothing. Thank you for loving me when I was difficult. Thank you for leaving when I forgot who I was. He never sent the letter. Some words are meant to stay as reminders, not messages. Daniel accepted that some consequences don't come with redemption arcs. Some mistakes don't offer second chances. Some people are only meant to love you once, and that has to be enough. He learned that wealth can buy comfort, but not character. That attention can feel like love, but it isn't. That loyalty given too freely is often valued too late. And the most painful lesson of all, you don't realize someone's worth when they're sacrificing for you. You realize it when they stop. Daniel lived the rest of his life quietly, carrying the truth with him like a scar, visible only to those who looked closely. He got rich and forgot his wife. What happened next didn't shock the world. It shocked him, because in losing her, he finally understood something success never taught him. The real poverty is not having no money. It's having no one left who loves you when the money is gone. There was one final moment in Daniel's life that no one ever talked about. Years after everything had fallen apart, on a quiet morning with no plans and no expectations, Daniel received a small package. No return address, no note inside, just a thin book. It was a collection of short reflections, handwritten and later printed. The dedication on the first page read, "To the people who learn the hard way and still choose to grow." Daniel recognized the words immediately. Mara. His hands trembled as he turned the pages. The writing was calm, mature, full of peace. She wrote about resilience, about rebuilding after emotional loss, about choosing self-respect over familiarity. She never mentioned his name. She never blamed. She never rewrote history. But every line carried the echo of a woman who had survived loving the wrong man at the wrong time. At the very end of the book was a single sentence. Some people are lessons, not lifetimes. Daniel closed the book and stared at the wall for a long time. For the first time, he didn't feel the urge to run from the pain. He didn't feel the need to justify himself. He didn't feel angry. He felt acceptance. He finally understood that loving someone doesn't entitle you to keep them. That support is not a debt to be repaid later. That being there at the beginning matters just as much as being there at the end. Daniel never tried to contact Mara again. Not because he didn't care, but because caring sometimes means letting someone live fully without you. He placed the book on his shelf, where it stayed for the rest of his life. Whenever he felt pride rising too fast, he read a page. Whenever he felt forgotten, he remembered why. And that became his quiet redemption. Not getting her back, but never becoming that man again. So if you're watching this right now, if someone is loving you while you're still building, if someone is standing beside you before the applause, don't wait until success changes your address but empties your home. Because some people don't leave loudly. They leave healed. And by the time you notice the silence, they're already gone. If this story touched you, subscribe for more deep, life-changing stories. Like this video so others can learn this lesson before it's too late. And comment below, what would you choose if you had to decide today? Ambition or the person who believes in you when no one else does? Thank you for staying until the very end.